So you're definitely a leader. And
I leave it up to others, you know. I just want to have fun in what I'm doing. I want to believe passionate in what I'm doing. People always say that you're passionate. Yeah, otherwise it doesn't work, you know.
One thing I'm making an assumption or a hypothesis you do is you work on fear and risk with people, right? That's a lot of what innovation is about. It's not just making a business case, but talking about the risks of innovation or de-risking a decision in some ways. You talked about drones and the fear around what that could do. And how do you work to de-risk the innovation or the technology?
Well, again, the building blocks that I already described, you allow people to test the technology so that you have an understanding, okay, where are still the issues to be solved. But these insights are not just for us, they're also for the technology providers. So you co-develop, you co-collaborate, you're not just sitting there saying, tell me what the risks are. Well, they don't know as well, you know. So it's by being proactive and working side by side that you take these risks, because innovation means risk. Otherwise, you're not innovating, right? So that is not a concern of us. It's inherently embedded in. Flying around with a drone is a risk. It can crash, right? If you don't want that, then don't start playing around with drones. But the benefits that you see in front of you are so appealing that you say, okay, we're gonna gradually and certainly with drones from a regulatory perspective, we went to the regulator and said, we understand that you have been tasked by transforming European legislation into Belgian legislation. And you're looking at it and you're saying, what the hell are we supposed to do with it? Right? So why don't you start here? Because we are a relevant platform for drone use cases. We're not interested in flying around with pizzas or shoe boxes or whatever. No, it's about really serious use cases. On top of that, you can do it in an area that is 120 square kilometers big, so big enough to have critical mass, where a lot of stakeholders are interested, and you have a local authority whose prime responsibility is safety and security. Mm-hmm. So in anything I do on water, on land, in the air, I have to look at the harbor master and say, what do you think, Niels? Tell me how confident you feel and what I need to solve for you to feel confident in what I'm about to do. And that's how you work together to come to the solution and to say, okay, under these conditions, it can be done in a safe and reliable way, which doesn't mean that the risk is gone. Every time you launch a drone, you take a risk, right? But the risks are mitigated. But the same as you stepping in a car, stepping in an airplane, stepping in whatever, that's part of life.
Right.
But it's a question of how you mitigate that, and what if the risk does materialize and you have something that crashes or fails, then what? That's also part of it. And that is the confidence you build in order to, but of course, to your point, because I understand the question, a lot of people, companies try to mitigate every potential risk. Well, good luck with that. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And they keep piling up pilots and proof of concepts and temporary permits. Yeah, but that's not how you build an economic activity. We are not just interested in making sure that we can use the technology, but we also like to have a viable ecosystem that has customers, can earn money, so that it becomes a sustainable ecosystem. Sustainable meaning it's something that can sustain itself. Because if it's only depending upon subsidies and one subsidy call after another to keep yourself alive as a company or as a project and initiative, then it will eventually stop. So if you have a lot of companies wanting drone activities or drone services, or a lot of companies want to have remote piloted barges, perfect, right? We facilitate that. That's our role. And in some cases, we also want to use the service, or we just want to make sure the service is available for strategic purposes, for our competitive positioning and a competitive role. But that's pulling up your sleeves and be involved, and not just sitting there as a government, as a semi-public entity saying, you prove me that everything can be done in a safe way. Yeah, where does that stop, right? Where does that stop? And they go from one certification, then this and that, and that's how many innovations die, because people just give up and say it's never going to happen, right? And in all honesty, with the drones, it took us a while, longer than anticipated, because we thought, having started in 2019, that when COVID happened, now we have one hell of an opportunity to use drones. Yeah, well, no, because, and first of all, and secondly, there was much less people walking around in the port. So what was the risk? Now, apparently that was not an option, or the government didn't move. And then 2 years later, when we thought, when is this going to happen? Then all of a sudden, everything started to speed up. That is, of course, something you have to deal with, because that unpredictability in timeline is something which is very difficult for you to get a grasp on. We've seen examples where it lasted longer than anticipated, and the opposite as well. Yeah.